Welcome, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hashley, and I'm the director of the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project. So I'd like to welcome you all to the Agriculture Technology Platform's online software to manage risks workshop series. So we're excited to have you join us this evening. This series is sponsored by the Northeast Risk Management Education Program, which is a grant program of USDA. And we are your host here at the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project. And I'll tell you a little bit about us in a second. But as we get started, I'd like to invite everyone to, if you'd like to add your name to the chat, you're welcome to add your pronouns, your farm name, where you're located, so we can get to know who's here and who's joining us this evening. And if you'd like to rename yourself, I have a little how-to guide here, so you can click. You go to the participant tab, you can click rename, and you can put your full name in there, or your pronouns and your farm name if you'd like as well, so that if while we're doing the Q&A session, we can know who we're talking to. We just ask if folks can keep themselves muted just to eliminate some of the background noise, and we can open it up. You're welcome to unmute yourself during the Q&A session and ask a live question. If you don't want to interrupt the speaker at the moment, I'm happy to be monitoring the chat. So feel free to answer or ask any questions to the chat as we go along, and I'm happy to make sure that we get those answered either as we go or toward the end as appropriate. And we are recording all the sessions, so you're welcome to keep your video on. It's optional. When we do move into the Q&A session, it's always nice for the speakers to be able to see who we're talking to, so we'd love to invite you at that time to turn your video on if you're able to. And just a little bit about New Entry. Our mission really is to improve our local and regional food systems by training the next generation of farmers to produce food that's healthy and make sure that that's accessible to everyone. So we do that through three main programs: our farmer training program, our food hub, and our national capacity building programs. Just a quick little infomercial about our farmer training programs. We do an ongoing Explore Farming workshop. Our next one is coming up on Tuesday, January 4th, and our next farm business planning, Monday, January 3rd, and our farm business planning course next session is starting on Tuesday, January 4th. So if you are interested in signing up for our business planning class, feel free to go to our website and get enrolled in that now. So it's starting soon for our next session, and then the next one doesn't start until the fall again. But we also have our crop production course and other workshops, and then access to land on our incubator farm. So the crop production course, if you're looking for hands-on learning in the field, will begin in May. And that's a hybrid course where you can learn production online and then come to the farm and get your hands dirty. And I already mentioned our business planning course that's coming up. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask. And just wanted to point out our YouTube channel has a virtual tour and other information. And this is also where we will be posting the recordings and have a channel for this session. So if you miss any of the workshops, I'll show you the webpage in a minute where everything will be posted, but you can also find them on our YouTube channel. And then we run a food hub CSA program and do market-based training. We'll be gearing up for some food safety trainings over the winter. Folks that are growing on our incubator farm and others, graduates, contribute to our food hub and food distribution programming. And as I mentioned, we do some national capacity building work to help other land-based beginning farmer programs share information. So these workshop series that we're doing are part of a bigger series of about 12 different workshops broken down into 4 different categories of risk. The first workshop's focused on legal risk and how to farmland focus to them. This series that we're doing in the workshop tonight is part of our financial risk. So last week we talked about different record keeping tools and software. Today we're talking about QuickBooks and moving from QuickBooks to Excel, from Excel to QuickBooks. And then in January, we'll be talking about using point of sale information from either Square or other programs to also make financial decisions. And then the next workshop series will be focused around production records and how you can look at what's coming in and out of your field or your production to make decisions on different enterprises, and then keeping records for soil health and organics. And then we'll move into a whole marketing risk series that's really focused on which e-commerce sales platforms might be right for you. So again, all these resources and all these workshops and any resources that speakers share with us will be posted to the web page that we've developed for this series. And you can go to our resources section of our website, down to the Farmer Resource Library, and then there's a side tab called Ag Technology Platform tab. And that's where all the links and recordings and links to other resources will be stored. Thanks to our funder again to make these free and available, to the Northeast Extension Risk Management Education Program. And because they are funding this, we are asking folks to please participate in our evaluation of the series. Really, the way the risk management program works is they really want to make sure that farmers are learning, understanding, evaluating, and applying the information that's presented. So I'm going to launch a quick poll in a minute. We'll do the same questions afterwards. So hopefully we'll see a change in knowledge from learning what you've learned through the workshop. And then afterward, when I send a follow-up email to the recording and the links, there'll be a quick workshop evaluation for you to give feedback to the presenters and to, again, share a little bit of information with us. It's pretty short. And then I will send up another follow-up workshop about probably mid-March or so, again, just to ask if you've been able to make any changes or are thinking about adopting a new software platform after learning all the things that you're learning through this series. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the first poll. It is 2 questions. First question is, how would you rate your knowledge of managing financial risk on your farm? It's a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being no knowledge, 5 being expert knowledge. And then the second question below that is, how would you rate your knowledge of analyzing financial records to make business decisions? So again, no knowledge to expert level knowledge. So if folks don't mind taking a few minutes to respond to those quick polls, I'd really appreciate it. And while you're doing that, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Oops, my slide is not advancing. Maybe because I have the poll launched, I'm not sure. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So tonight's session again is on hopefully transitioning from whatever kind of record keeping software or system, maybe it's even paper, maybe it's even a shoebox, to thinking about using Excel. So I'm delighted to introduce Cian Dalzell. He's the farmer and co-owner of 3 Maples Market Garden out in Western Mass. And he's been a consultant for the Carrot Project and others, and is doing a great job of helping farm and food businesses with their finances. So I'd like to, I'll close the poll now, but turn it over to Cian, and I will stop sharing so you can get started. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. So I'm Cian Dalzell. This is actually a picture of my farm. That's my greenhouse, chamomile in the front, mess that has vegetables in it in the back. I have a few acres in vegetables at 3 Maples Market Garden. We're mostly a CSA farm, and so I have the opportunity to be able to bring more than one perspective to this, which is, I think, a really helpful thing for a lot of folks, because some of the folks that I've talked to over the years about my books have been so divorced from food that they don't know how that would even apply to a farm. So it's nice to know that there is a lot of help out there in terms of making these transitions for your own farm. And especially there's a lot of help from other folks who know what it's like to farm and have built the experience on both sides of the accounting software, I suppose. So I'm a farmer, I'm a consultant, I'm a nerd. I came a little late to applying my nerdiness specifically to the books for my farm. I got really into the nuts and bolts. I took 3 apprenticeships on organic farms before my wife and I started our own farm. And so there was this point at which I hadn't learned any of the financial stuff. And that wasn't where my focus was, which I think is where how a lot of us come to this. We didn't get into farms necessarily to be entrepreneurs, but we, generally speaking, the people who end up in agriculture are not the same people who really like to take a lot of accounting courses and sit staring at spreadsheets all the time. But I have learned that I do like staring at spreadsheets. I just don't like doing it when it's warm out. I like doing it when it's rainy out. I like doing it when it's really snowy out or really cold. But if it's a nice day, I tend to be the person who's neglecting my own books. So if you do that, At least with me, you won't find too much harsh judgment. So we are going to have a Q&A at the end. This is just in all of my presentations. If you're engaging in the chat, just please be respectful. And if you find that you have a lot of questions, I want to hear all of them, but you might want to sit down for a little while, let other people ask some questions, and then come back. You can ask as we go. You can put them in the chat as we go, and then they can be voiced. If I don't see them, they can be voiced for you. So we talked about the idea of a shoebox, or working toward
Oh, I think Cian might have frozen for a second there.
QuickBooks. And that's really how I think about it. It's with QuickBooks, just tail operation gotten too complex for us. My connection is unstable.
Yeah, sorry. I think you froze for a minute. So I don't know if you want to go back and we didn't hear what you said about financial complexity. Sorry.
That's okay. So as we add financial complexity to our businesses, that's the point at which we, I think on average as farmers, start realizing that we're a little bit in over our heads in terms of our financial capacity, our understanding of our books, and then we shift forward as far as we need to as we go. So for me, my farm started a little over 10 years ago, and we started with a single shoebox, and all the receipts went in the shoebox. And then at the end of the year, I sat down and cried a little bit as I figured out the taxes. And then it went from one shoebox to multiple shoeboxes with little labels. It told me, you know, this, or multiple envelopes that told me which receipts were for what thing, so that I could do my Schedule F a little easier. And then it turned into an Excel spreadsheet. And then I realized that the Schedule F was a terrible way for me to make decisions for my farm. That's true for everyone. The Schedule F is how a lot of people set up their chart of accounts and how they think about their numbers, and it just doesn't help them make decisions. So it was holding me back. So then I got increasingly complex Excel spreadsheets until I finally purchased QuickBooks. And then I didn't use it for a while after I purchased it because it was hard to set up for my own farm, which is especially funny because I do set this up for other people's farms. But for my own farm, it felt very different. So then I had to get help so that I could start actually using my QuickBooks software. And the more that I've helped other people get set up with this, the more that I realized that other people are doing the same process, that we go a little bit further, we go a little bit further, we go a little bit further. But getting to the point of using software for bookkeeping really feels like a huge jump. And it doesn't have to be, especially because there's help for it. But it doesn't necessarily fit for everyone, which is a weird thing to say for the person who's decidedly here to tell you that you should have software. You probably should. Most farms should have bookkeeping software. It makes a huge difference. But if you're not there yet, just go right to a spreadsheet. Don't mess around with the shoe boxes. Work in the spreadsheet program that you have or that you can get. I prefer Microsoft Excel. I find that it is much more functional. I also prefer using Excel when I'm working with QuickBooks because I can send my reports to Excel. So it's a good thing to be able to be fairly fluent in Excel, to be able to help really read and use the information you're getting from your bookkeeping software as you keep going in that direction. But I've had clients who have worked with Google Sheets or Open Office Sheets. And then the accounting software itself, there's a wider range of functions. You get reports. It was really designed for the purpose of keeping your books and helping you make decisions, as well as being more secure. Spreadsheets are okay, but they're not as good. Also, a lot of people live on their phones now. And so you can't really do that with a spreadsheet. We're going to talk specifically about QuickBooks Online a little bit later. But I wanted to point out that there are different things that fit different businesses. I have a business that I worked with that has one product, and they harvest for a window of like 4 weeks of the year. And frankly, they could probably get by with Microsoft Excel. They've been doing it that way for literally 100 years. Well, with Excel for 30 years and before that with paper. And they don't have the kind of complexity in their business model that really requires accounting software, except for dealing with staff. And at this point, it's so much easier for them now that they're switching to QuickBooks to be able to handle payroll, because that's something that can happen right in the accounting software, and it doesn't take all the extra paper and work and math, because it does that kind of stuff for you. So really, it's when you get to the point where you have questions that you can't answer with a spreadsheet that you need to look into software, as soon as you possibly can and make that switch. And that might be because you have payroll now, or you're invoicing more. It may be because you're looking to invest. It may be because you want to look better to the banks when you decide to invest and you go in because you're asking for them to help you out and give you a loan. Whatever is coming up for you in your farm, in addition to all of those things, there's the complexity that's coming, increasingly coming toward all of us in terms of things like the climate crisis, and having the data that we need to be able to make our decisions quickly and with confidence to keep our businesses financially sustainable is really important. I find that bookkeeping software really helps with that for virtually all of the farms that I've worked with over the past 6 years. But one of the reasons to upgrade and to decide when to upgrade is when you can get technical assistance to help you get set up. There is fully funded or largely funded, depending on the income of your farm, technical assistance to have someone come and set up your QuickBooks with you and really get you with your feet under you before you're flying by yourself with QuickBooks or with another spreadsheet program, or with another software, but especially with QuickBooks, because that's what most of us are trained in. Part of it is really that bookkeeping is a practice. It's never going to be perfect. If you're trying to wait until you have your feet under you with all of your books and you can make all the financial decisions before you switch to QuickBooks, it's never going to happen. So you need to jump in first. And creating those systems all over the farm that work for you to get the data that you need, and then adjust them as they stop working for you. We do the same thing in our bookkeeping. You set up the chart of accounts that works for you at first, and then you make adjustments as things stop working for you. As your business changes, you change the chart of accounts, you change whatever the system is, whether that's when you're doing the meetings or when you're sitting down to do your receipts, or what kind of software you're using. The important thing is to be focusing on it and being able to make it really work for you. And one of the things that I found really help is putting together the questions that you want to answer from your bookkeeping. It's not just, information goes in, information comes out. It's, I need to know which of these things is more profitable. I need to know what revenue streams are working for my farm. And you have to ask those questions and set up your books to help with that. That's the kind of thing you can't do without software. It really doesn't work very well to have that kind of complexity, even in Excel. You really have to have software for that. And QuickBooks is designed to be able to help you answer those questions. You can choose a few things to work on each year and really focus on, and then move around to get better and better data over time. There are a lot of places that you can get assistance from in terms of setting up QuickBooks. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So one of the things that's really frustrating for a lot of folks when they start with QuickBooks, and I think has a lot of folks dragging their heels in terms of making that jump towards software, is that the numbers might start a little fuzzy. You won't have perfect numbers. I have yet to meet a business, agricultural or otherwise, that has perfect books. I am convinced that everybody who says they have perfect books are lying, that they don't realize, because they haven't been working in them enough, to realize that there's something not quite perfect about it. It might not be answering the questions they need. They might have things categorized the wrong way a little bit occasionally. Nobody's books are perfect. As you build your capacity in terms of understanding and using your books, you have better numbers each year, and the focus really increases over time. And the more focus you have and the more understanding you have of your books, the better your decision making, the more you can do with them, and the more that really helps your business be financially sustainable. But I was asked to talk about QuickBooks in particular. I use QuickBooks, I actually use QuickBooks Online. It is perhaps the most expensive of the softwares. So it's the standard. And because it's the standard, it's the gold standard, they can really command the price that we end up all paying for QuickBooks, the name as well as the product. So one of the things that is good about that, it's really everywhere. There are more answers, there are more forums, there's a lot more support. You can get a chat box going with someone from Intuit pretty much any time, day or night. There are more classes available if you decide that you need to learn more. There's a lot more support to learn more. There are more technical assistance providers who are fluent in QuickBooks and who can help you answer those questions. And many of whom are trained specifically in agricultural books. There are a lot of other products and companies that work with QuickBooks. You may be able to import information from a point of sale system or a website point of sale. And frankly, I think they have more clout with banks. If you have somebody, if you go in to talk to someone about a loan and you go in with, and it's pretty clear when you go in with a profit and loss statement that it was from QuickBooks, they know that you have QuickBooks, which means that they assume that you're really spending the time and have more footing and understanding with your books, with your numbers, which makes you a better bet. As you know, banks are really betting on us if they're loaning us money. So I find that the comfort of knowing that I'm going to be taken more seriously, especially as someone who is most often walking into the bank with dirt smeared somewhere on my person. The idea that if I'm going and asking them to bet on me and loan me money, that I can talk their language a bit and they will treat me seriously is really helpful. And it shouldn't be lost on you that I am now talking to you as a technical assistance provider. I have been able to turn what I learned into something that is an income for me. And that's really more of an opportunity with QuickBooks than it is with other bookkeeping softwares. So if you are fairly fluent in QuickBooks, you can barter assistance for other farms, whether that's that if you're raising livestock and you want to buy a whole bunch of root vegetables at the end of the year so that you can barter that time with somebody else for an exchange. I know a lot of farmers that moonlight as bookkeepers. Most farms in the United States have off-farm income. If your off-farm income is something that can also help you with your farm, all the better for it as far as I'm concerned. And you can provide technical assistance to other farms. So that's what I do. It's also, I said earlier that I couldn't get my own book set up. I was tripping over myself. And so I actually was contacted by another farmer in my area who was part of a grant program. She also helps with QuickBooks, and she had an organization that was paying her to help farmers with QuickBooks. So she was contacting a bunch of farmers who she knew were right at that point of switching to QuickBooks and offering her services. So she was getting paid by a third party that I didn't have to pay her for the help, but I got the help. And because of that, everybody was happy, right? The organization was getting what they wanted and what their grant was for, and they were proving that they had put in for this grant appropriately, and they were more likely then to probably get the next grant that they put in for from this organization. This farmer during the winter is getting paid. So, she was making some money in January to help me get set up. And I felt like I could spend the winter focusing on my books and learning more about that before my season started as a vegetable farmer in the spring, and I lose that capacity. So there's really something I think to be said about understanding that a lot of us don't have the option of forgetting about having off-farm incomes. And so if we're able to plan things to work together in some capacity, that can be really helpful as a strategy. And as we had in the chat, which QuickBooks? There are two main breakdowns. One is the online version, one is the desktop version. I use online. It's got the option of using a mobile phone if you're one of those people that has a cell phone all the time. If you have an app that you are working with in the field, this may tie into that fairly well for you. You can do invoicing on your phone. There's socially distanced support if you have online, which is nice to not, at this point, to not have to worry about that at all. It is more expensive, generally speaking. It's a little bit of a higher price for the support that you, not the support itself, but the reports, the number of the level of complexity that you get from QuickBooks. The desktop version is lower cost for the level of complexity with their annual payments. But online plays really well with importing information from your banks and your credit cards. So it really depends on what fits. Some of my clients have a single computer. They don't have internet access, whether that's in the field or in the barn or wherever it is. They have one office. They're going to be doing all of this in that office. And it's harder to do the technical support in terms of having someone help you out. You might have to be in the same room, but it's a lower price. And for those of us who have sketchy or non-existent internet in rural areas, the desktop version really does make more sense for a lot of folks. Online actually just takes longer to do the processing because it's, going up to a satellite and going elsewhere. The desktop, it's doing the processing right on your computer. So if you are really impatient, desktop may be also a good option for you.
Cian, can I just share though? I assume that the online version is backed up in the cloud. Is that true? Because I had a hard drive failure once with our computer, and all of our QuickBooks data for multiple years was on it, and I was scared to death that I was never going to get that data back. Fortunately, I had a good friend who worked at MIT who was able to forensically extract the data, but that's just another consideration folks might want to make about their backup systems.
QuickBooks is now offering backup for desktop. It's, I believe, part of their annual payment is having a backup. It might not be as backed up because you're getting kind of an automatic save function with the online version, and you may have to press a button with the desktop version. But if you are connected to the internet, you can in fact back up all of that stuff. I know people who used to have like the thumb drive with their QuickBooks backup on it, but they're trying to update that. I think that's becoming more of a concern in a lot of areas, to just have a backup up copy. Thankfully, they're listening to folks who are having trouble like that. One of the things that I found a lot of folks struggle with in terms of their bookkeeping is that, you buy QuickBooks and you set it up and then you're done, right? It's set up, you just put the information in, you answer the questions it asks you, and you're done, and all the information is there. Except that it's not. The idea of adding complexity to your understanding for your books, it starts with your understanding of your farm. And that means that you're the one collecting data, or you and your staff are collecting data. It means that you're building systems and habits and support in terms of people, as well as in terms of just how you have things structured to be able to do good record keeping. So in my world, that means having a clipboard and receipts and invoice books and things like that in my car, because I am a parcel farmer. I have 2 different parcels, and if I have to pick at 2 different places before I deliver something, I need to have all of that with me as I go. And that might be different for different people. If you're all on one location, if you have a livestock farm and everything's in the barn and it's all going to be there, then your system will look different. But I know that no matter how technically advanced, no matter how many computers there are at a lot of the farms that I work with, ultimately, especially if they have a bunch of staff members, they have clipboards. You're not going to get rid of the paper. You're just going to be able to answer, you're going to ask the right questions on the paper to get the data you need digitized. And as long as that is something that's structured into your farm, and you have that increasingly accurate and increasingly detailed data to answer the questions that you have, you can make those changes that you need as you go to stay, frankly, to stay cash positive, to stay at that point where you can stay farming, which is such a question for a lot of folks, unfortunately. I'm a big fan of building accountability into your systems, and that may be having regular meetings. I have a couple of clients that every quarter I sit down with them and we do more detailed projections. But I also have other farmers that I took courses with and learned about bookkeeping with, and we're texting back and forth occasionally with questions from QuickBooks, like, how did you figure this out? I'm having trouble with Square, whatever it is, back and forth, to have that we can check in on each other, and that can be really helpful. And being patient with yourself is part of building the systems that you need. And since we had a question about who to contact, it depends on where you are. I'm in Massachusetts, which means that I'm in southern New England. So the Carrot Project serves the area that I'm in. I happen to be someone who works with the Carrot Project now, but the Carrot Project is also someone that I've been one of their participants over time. I had my QuickBooks For set up with Berkshire Ag Ventures, and that happens to be a very localized organization to my area of Western Massachusetts. CISA is also in Western Massachusetts, but the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources has a lot of really good programs, including that if you get a grant with them, you can be partnered with technical assistance. So they pay people, including some of us being farmers, to help folks with their QuickBooks. These are all organizations that serve where I am. But we have somebody on the call that's in Oregon. I don't know what organizations are out there. You may be able to get some support specifically from New Entry. I don't know who their contacts are. So definitely talk to Jennifer. She's here, she's your contact, she's very friendly. And she can help you potentially get set up with those folks. But a big part of it is finding your local organizations and just putting out there and say, I need help setting up my QuickBooks, or I'm having trouble with this. Do you know who to contact? And I've had a number of times where people have contacted one organization and then been sent to another in this area to get the support they need. But the organizations know each other, so they can help you by helping you get to the right place. And just as Jennifer asked us to fill out a poll earlier, they may ask you to do that as functionally as payment or as partial payment, because if they can prove to their funders that they are helping farmers, then they're more likely to get more reliable funding. So filling out a poll is a heck of a lot easier than finding my own professional to help me with a question that I have for QuickBooks. If I can find an organization that has funding for that, to pay someone, and I can provide them with data so that they can see that they helped me, so that they can get more grants, so that they can help me more later, and they can help my industry and the other businesses in my area. I think that that is probably the best case scenario for most of us. This is my information if you'd like to keep in touch with me. This is me personally and also my farm. You should know that I do not have the keys to the Instagram account. So please, I may have taken the picture, but I have no idea what's on the Instagram account. But I'm going to hand it back to Jennifer so that she can introduce M to give us a different perspective.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Cian. I feel like you just poured a lot of really good tips and information in a short amount of time. So thank you for sharing that and for all the great work you're doing helping farmers get set up with their QuickBooks systems and other bookkeeping systems. So I'd love to both address some of the questions in the chat. I think as Cian said, if there are folks that are not from Massachusetts, he just shared a bunch of great Massachusetts-based technical assistance providers that can help. But if you're from another part of the country, since New Entry does run a national network of other beginning farmer training programs, I'm happy to look through our database and find another beginning farmer training program in your area if you're not already connected, and they may know who a similar landscape of service providers are in your state. And usually and your local extension office, your land grant university, also many across the country have business planners or other farm viability experts somewhere in their team. So hopefully they could also make a referral. All right, so thank you. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce Emily Round. She is one of our New Entry incubator farmers who's in her second year here, but she has 8 years of growing experience growing cut flowers. So She knows a lot and is here to share her experience transitioning to QuickBooks as well. So take it away, Emily. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I was just in another 2.5 hour Zoom class, so I am ready to go. I have a little slideshow, so I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Oh, have to do this really quick. Sorry, I was planning on sharing my screen and it told me that I can't because my privacy settings. So now I have to, I'm going to quit and re-enter really fast because without sharing my screen, I can show you guys nothing. So I'll be back in like 2 seconds.
No
Does
problem.
anyone have any particular questions for me while we wait for Emily's technology issues?
Feel free to unmute yourself, or you're welcome to continue to use the chat.
This is Carrie in Oregon. I have been using Quicken, which is also an Intuit-based software, but I don't know if it's related to QuickBooks or how it compares, because everyone else just says use QuickBooks. But it seems, I just wonder what your opinion is. It seems satisfactory so far, but there are times when I think if I learned more, I could do more.
I think that it's a great opportunity for you during the winter, if that's a downtime for you and your business, to learn a little bit more about QuickBooks to see what the differences are. I'm not as familiar with Quicken. My impression is that it is a little bit more basic, a little stripped down, and that if you want the kind of complexity and the reports that you can get out of QuickBooks, that you're not getting the same level of detail out of Quicken. But there are a lot of really good opportunities to look at that right now, so that you can make that decision and get things set up before your next season gets really underway.
All right, so I've got my computer figured out now. So hopefully you can all see my computer screen. I'm just going to go a little bit about why I started using QuickBooks, and then I'm going to go into why how I use it on a regular basis. So I'm going to like open up QuickBooks and take you through a few quick things to, sorry, 1 second, to just kind of show you, you know, like what I do on there and what could be helpful for you, and maybe it's not helpful for you. And yeah, so just give me 1 second to switch some things around. Very prepared after coming straight from YouTube. And we're just going to disconnect this. All right, there we go. Now I'm ready. So my name is Emily Round, or Emily G. Round, which is where the grounded comes from, in Grounded Flower Farm. I grow cut flowers. I have over 200 CSA members, and I wholesale direct to about 15 florists. I started my own farm in 2020 on a 1/4 acre of leased land from New Entry Sustainable Farming Project on their incubator farm. So I share space with 12 other farms. And that means I share infrastructure too. So I've got infrastructure that I can use. I grew to 3/4 acre this past year in 2021. So I tripled in size. I hired part-time employees, and I also quadrupled my gross profits. And by doing that, I was able to pay myself this year, which was very exciting. And I feel like I do owe a good portion of this to using QuickBooks. And I just want to, before I start like talking more about QuickBooks and stuff, acknowledge that, you know, every farm is different. I've had privileges that not maybe everyone has. Like I have a lot of infrastructure that I have access to on New Entry as part of my lease that I haven't had to invest in yet. I saved and borrowed some money to get my farm started. You know, I have a partner who's able to help support me and house me during my first year of farming for myself. I never used Excel. I don't know why that ended up under acknowledging my privileges, but I think I had it titled something else before, but I never used Excel for my finances. And part of what helped me grow my CSA so fast was I had started a CSA on another farm that ended up closing down. And so I was able to move my CSA from there to just my own business. So yeah. One of my big farm goals has been to be financially secure. So I wanted to be able to pay myself. I want to be able to take time off, and I want to have the farm be self-sustaining financially. So I'm not just always putting money into it, because I want it to be, you know, my only job. And I wanted to avoid debt. So I came up with some ways to kind of achieve this goal. And one was setting up QuickBooks, just because I had been told over and over again, QuickBooks is the best. And to have a cash flow plan, which I figured out last winter with the Carrot Project, and then grow crops with a high price point. And for me, those are flowers. I get a pretty good return on, I guess, investments with my flowers. So when I did my accounting in 2020, I had been farming full-time for 6 years before starting my own farm, but I had been mostly doing farm-centric stuff and not accounting centric stuff. So I was starting from zero with my accounting and my finances. I can grow really great dahlias. I have no idea what the difference between gross and net is, and I still get confused by those words. And I often find myself Googling these terms. So again, I'm not a financial expert or an accountant. I'm just a farmer who is trying to take control of her finances. So I started with a shoebox of receipts. I actually found that shoebox when I was cleaning out my basement yesterday. I just put all of my receipts in there. I use Squarespace accounting, which is really just an Excel sheet that they spit out at you that shows you who bought what, when they bought it, and a lot of other weird things that you don't really need to know. My bank ledger, so that like little month by month sheet that they give you of what your finances looked like. And I tried to set up QuickBooks by myself by reading The Farmer's Office by Julia Shanks. I failed very miserably at that. I still had no idea what I was doing. I wanted to throw my laptop out the window. Glad I didn't. And I tried doing that in July. I don't suggest trying to do farm things that are not outside in July. I ignored my shoebox of receipts until February when tax season came. And I tried to put together all of my finances based on my receipts, my Excel sheet from Squarespace accounting that it spat out at me, and my bank ledger. I cried multiple times doing this. It was not easy, and I never want to do that again. I thought I made money in 2020, but just kidding. I didn't actually make money when I ended up doing my taxes. It turns out I lost some money and was, you know, not necessarily accounting for all the expenses that went into the farm, because, you know, putting things on your personal account versus the farm account and all that fun stuff. So I really wanted to make sure that I was not going to be surprised again when it came to doing my finances. So when I got set up with QuickBooks, I knew I just wanted someone to literally hold my hand and walk me through the process, because I'm not an accountant. Net and gross, I don't know. Profit and loss, I don't know what those, well, I know what they are a bit more now, but, you know, I just was confused by the whole chart of account systems and the invoicing and all of the stuff. So I just wanted someone to hold my hand through the process. And so I talked with the Carrot Project, told them I knew how to farm, I knew my markets, I understand my field, I know how to grow stuff, but I have no idea how to manage my finances or use QuickBooks. And you'll see me using QBO on certain things, or saying like QBO. QBO just stands for QuickBooks Online, which is what I ended up going with versus the QuickBooks desktop version, just because it seemed less accountant-y. It seemed a little more accessible for me to look at the online version, where I am a millennial who's good at doing online things. So they set me up with a person who walked me through the entire process of setting up my chart of accounts, connecting my Squarespace to to QuickBooks and just kind of like automating as many things as possible so that I wouldn't be having to spend a ton of time during the season, like trying to figure things out or trying to, you know, I don't know, hand enter things from my bank account into my QuickBooks. So there's a few different things that I do use QuickBooks for. I sell all my CSAs through Squarespace, through my website, and then a program automatically enters them into my QuickBooks. I balance my bank account through QuickBooks. I invoice my wholesale customers and I receive payments from my wholesale customers all through QuickBooks. I like looking at my profit and loss statements, and I really like looking at my reports because I do all of my wholesaling invoicing through QuickBooks. I'll show you guys what it looks like in a few minutes. But I can look at some really fun reports because I have all that data just ready at my fingertips. I also use it just to get a quick look at what my finances are looking like, whether or not I should buy that thing that I want, or whether or not I need to, you know, be stingy and save those pennies for something coming on later down the line. And I also use it for paying sales taxes. Then there's some things that I don't use it for. I don't run payroll through it. I don't, because it's online, they always have little pop-ups being like, you want to pay for this extra thing. Don't you want to pay for that extra thing? I just ignore all those because I am pretty happy with what I have QuickBooks doing for me right now. So I'm going to just hop into my QuickBooks and show you guys stuff. I thought about doing screenshots of everything and like blurring out my numbers and things like that, but I am not that technologically advanced. So you're going to be seeing my actual numbers. So just, you know, remember everyone's farm's different. Just because I might have money in the bank account right now doesn't mean I've paid my taxes for next year yet. And, you know, just remember that we all have different privileges and fun things like that. So this is what you see when you, or what I see when I open up my QuickBooks. I have my cash flow for the past 12 months. You can change it to a cash balance. And I started using my QuickBooks here, so that's why it's in the red there. We don't like seeing the red. But it'll show you your money in, your money out. It'll show you your profit and loss for the year. It claims my net income is $49,000 for the year. It's not. I have not updated my QuickBooks the past couple days. So it'll show you your income and your expenses. And this also does not include the owner's draw because of how they set it up. So that doesn't include like paying myself. And you have a quick look of what your total expenses are. So you've got direct operating, general administrative, Stripe fees is in there for some reason. That is just one of the ways I set it up. And yeah, so that's just kind of like the homepage. So even just on the homepage, I've got a lot of good information that kind of gives me an idea of how my business is working and where the money is and where the money is going. Let's see. One of the things that I do use this a lot for is invoicing. To make an invoice, I just go new, invoice. I have my chart of accounts all set up. And if you hear someone say chart of accounts, that really just means like different categories that you can put things in, whether it's income or I was going to say outcome, but I guess that's expenses, not outcome. And just different categories like that. I have all of my wholesale customers already set up in my system. So we'll say my friend Paige is looking to buy a bunch of dahlias for a wedding she's working on. I sell a lot to event florists. I can just type in her name and she comes right up. And her email is already entered into her little box here. If I wanted to, I could add her billing address in, but I don't care what her billing address is because I don't really use that. I can set up how I want her to, or when I want her to pay. So I have net 30, she has 30 days to pay from the date of invoice. Sometimes I'll set it up so that if someone wants to pre-order a bunch of stuff, I can go forward a couple months or a couple weeks put their invoice for that date. And then when I go look at my invoices for a certain week, it'll just pop up there and I'll be like, oh, I already sold those flowers. So I don't really use it for inventory management. I use it more for like invoicing and yeah, just not inventory management. And then it changes the due date to a month out. And the other great thing that the invoices do for QuickBooks is that you can have it automatically send reminder emails to people to pay you. So I don't have to remember to send any reminders. I can have it set up to, do a 3 days out before due date, on the due date, 3 days after the due date. And I've had multiple times where I have not realized someone was past due. And then they text me and they go, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot to pay you. I just paid you right now. And I go, cool. I hadn't even looked at my invoices lately because it's kind of all automated for me and it sends out emails automatically. So I hope you don't think I'm mad at you. I'm not. It's just what my QuickBooks does. And I don't have to do it, which is great. Anything that I don't have to do during the season that like takes something off my plate is pretty awesome. People can pay for their invoices via credit card or bank transfer. I have it set up so that they can just pay through that. I don't have to go to the bank to cash a check or do any other like fancy accounting hopscotch or anything to get numbers where they need to be. So that's just kind of like the basic outline of the invoice. Then I can add items. I have set up all of my flowers already, which I kind of just did during the season as I was selling stuff. So you click on the product service, say she wants dahlias. I can scroll through my different dahlia items. Click dahlia. I sell dahlias by the stem, and we're going to say she's a great customer and she wants 100 white dahlias. So I type in 100. I have different rates that I sell my dahlias at. My white ones are usually $2.50, and the math is automatically done for you. I like to put in the description what variety she's going for, or just like some information about like if I'm out of one thing, I can sub with something else. And she also loves scabiosa. We're gonna say she wants 5 bunches of that. And this one I do have the rate, the price automatically entered into it. But sometimes I change it if it's like a really fancy variety that florists like. So we'll say she wants the more expensive variety, which is the Fata Morganas. And we'll say she wants delivery to Gloucester. So I've got all of my things already just like lined out. If you sell flowers in Massachusetts, they are subject to our sales tax. She is a wholesale customer. So she resells products that I sell. So even though the tax box is checked off here, I have gone through her customer profile and changed her to a tax exempt person. So you can also like keep track of things like that through QuickBooks. So the tax was not calculated for this, but taxes can be calculated through this. And that's all I have to really do. Then I just click save and send, and it'll send an email to her. And it's just a quick preview of what it looks like for when she gets her invoice. If you haven't seen a QuickBooks invoice before, it sends a nice email, and it even has like a pay invoice link on it. So they just click the pay invoice and they pay right through the program. They do charge a little bit of money to do this through the program. I try to build these costs into my sales prices, just because it saves me so much time and so much stress to not have to worry about that later on. So like for me, or like just the cost of QuickBooks in general, I just try to build it into what I'm doing, because otherwise I would be either spending more time on it or paying someone else to do it, or just like all these other things. So for me, it's worth the cost, which I think is maybe like $30 a month for the program. And then the price for processing credit cards is pretty comparable to any other credit card processing service. So once I have an invoice made, I can go see, look at all of my invoices. I like to do them by date. And once you pull up your invoices, it'll show you if you have anyone who's overdue, and how much money is not due yet. And if once they pay you, it'll tell you that you've been paid, and you'll have an amount and then not deposited, and then you'll have how much money has been deposited in the last 30 days. Through here, I can just look at, all the different invoices I have. I can, open up the general information about it and see what someone put on their order. I can print out the invoice. I also make my pick lists this way for things. I like to pick by florist for when I'm out in the field harvesting. So I'll just print their invoice so I know what I need to go harvest. And you can print multiple ones at the same time, which I like. And if you have someone who's overdue, you can click overdue and it will show you someone is overdue. And this is just, if you know Allie Greenberg, she's not actually overdue. I just made this up earlier today because I wanted to show you guys what an overdue thing looked like. Yeah, so that's kind of how the invoicing works. You can go look at your customers. If they want to look at Paige again, I just type in her name and it'll show me all of her customer details. It'll show me all of her invoices and payments. So I can go in and just kind of like look and see, what she's bought. If she wants me to go be like double check an invoice or something, which she never does because she's pretty easy. Yeah. And then there's products and services. I would teach, I don't think that's worthwhile for me to try to teach you how to like set these things up right now, because for me, it did take a little while and a bit of work to get everything set up. But now that it's set up, I can kind of just cruise through getting stuff put together during the season. So that's kind of just like the invoicing part that I like to use. The other thing I like a lot are the reports, especially the sales by product / service summary, because I have all of my wholesale stuff in like itemized out in here. I can look back and be like, all right, the florists wanted 1 million white dahlias this week. I need to have 1 million more white dahlias this week. So I can look at it just for the whole overall year and see that my CSA, I sold 38 shares in Beverly and 41 shares for my summer share in Beverly versus 10 in Marblehead. And, just looking at these things right in front of you with only having to press like 2 or 3 buttons, it's really nice because I can say, Beverly's does really well. Maybe I don't need to have a CSA pickup in Marblehead. It'll give you like the percentage of your total sales. And then I've got all of my flowers listed out. And I like to think of my wholesale separately from my CSA because they're just like 2 very different avenues for me. So when I'm planning for my next year for what I want to plant for my florists, I will customize my report and I will filter it so that I am just looking at my individual flower sales. Just have to keep moving my little video box so that I can click things. Let's see, is that the right one? Yes. And it'll break down how many bunches of each variety of flower I sold and what my average price for them was, because sometimes I like to experiment with pricing, or I decide, oh, that nobody's buying that, maybe I priced it too high. So I kind of look at things that way too. And then if you like doing like enterprise budgets on the fly, one of the things I will do is just like compare 2 different flowers from this list. It's a pretty long list. I need to cut back on some things, like I sold 1 bunch of star flowers. Maybe I don't need to sell that next year. But say I'm just going to pull up 2 flowers that I sold this year that I made about a similar amount of money on. And one's not actually a flower, one is grass. It's called explosion grass. The florists love it. People love it. It makes me think that I should be a grass farmer instead of a flower farmer sometimes because of how much people love it. So we're going to compare grass and zinnias and run the report. So I made about $1,500 on each of them. I sold 99 bunches of grass. I sold about 132 bunches of zinnias. Average price was a bit higher for the grass, average price a little bit lower for zinnias. But I know that just in my head, I planted about 20 feet of explosion grass. I planted about 400 feet of zinnias. So just by having that information there in front of me, I can kind of go back in my head and think, is it worth it for me to grow this, or should I be growing something else, and kind of, make those calculations. Because 20 feet of explosion grass, that makes about as much money as my zinnias. Seems like it might be a better use of my space, but I cannot stop growing zinnias. I try to cut back on them every year, and I can't. So even though you have the data doesn't mean you're going to do smart things with it or financially feasible things with it. You can also click on your different things that you've entered in, and I can see who bought them, when they were bought, and what varieties that they were buying. I am medium organized with my QuickBooks. I'm not 100% organized. So I can sort them by their memo and sort by memo, sending order. Sometimes I think I know what I'm doing, and then there we go. And then I can see, just like take a general look and be like, oh, I sold a lot of cupcake rose. I only sold deep red ones once. Maybe I don't need deep red. Red flowers are my least favorite flowers for some reason. So I'm always trying to just like not grow them. And then everything that starts with a Q is from the Queen series zinnia. And that is definitely the most popular zinnia for my florist, anything in the Queen series. Yeah. And I can also click on the customer and I can come up to the invoice. It all just circles back around to each other. So I can know that Kelia, when she bought those zinnias, also bought all this other wonderful stuff, which is pretty nice. Then the other thing I do is my profit and loss, and that's just gives you like the whole snapshot of how the business is doing. And you can change around the dates. So you can see like September was a really good month for me because that's wedding season and I sell a lot to wedding florists. And because it's a good month, it's more exciting. So you can change it to September, run your report, and income. I don't make any money off CSA in September, but I do make a good amount of money on wholesale. And I thought I was going to do a lot of direct sales this year. Turns out that I just don't want to have another venue that I have to pursue because I like having weekends. And it'll show you like what you spent your money on. And this is stuff that you figure out when you set up your chart of accounts. Do you want to have a field supplies or floral supplies? That's up to you. One of mine that I have under my direct operating cost is dahlia tubers because I spend a lot of money on dahlia tubers. So if I pulled up a different month, I could show you how much money I've spent on my dahlia tubers all year. Just because that's something I'm curious about. So that's why I put it in there. And it's nice that I don't have to, do any excelling, I guess, to get these numbers figured out. I just have to press some buttons. And really, there's like really 5 reports that I look at repeatedly, but I'd like to look at them in different ways by changing the dates on them or by changing what information that they're showing. Then I also do my sales tax reporting with QuickBooks. Sales tax, the first time I paid it, I ended up double taxing myself because I was just doing the math afterwards. I was like, I'll just sell everything and I'll figure out my sales tax later on. And so instead of subtracting out sales tax from what I owed for my sales tax, I added sales tax onto what I had made. So I ended up paying my sales tax plus my imaginary sales tax that I had added on to everything that I had paid. So I had to go back and fix that. Now all I have to do is look at my upcoming sales tax due, and it's $276, and I don't have to do any math. I just go into my my Massachusetts Tax Connect account and I enter a couple numbers and the money is there. And I already know that I have to pay it. Yeah, so I guess those are the major things that I use it for. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't use the cash flow at all. I do have an Excel sheet for my cash flow projections. I spend about 1 day a month usually going through and reconciling everything. I can show you really quick. Let's see. So when I say things like chart of accounts, one of the things you do is you look at your transactions and you put them into a bubble of what you think they belong in. So this is an order from Johnny's. I bought some field supplies. So I go into here and I have all these different categories I can put it under to figure out, what bubble does it belong in. So this belongs in the field supplies. Then I confirm it. And that's how, things get from point A to point B. From my bank ledger to my reports. Yeah, and I have, like I said, I have my Squarespace set up so that everything from Squarespace just automatically comes through and gets recorded in my QuickBooks, which makes things very easy. I do all my CSA sales through my Squarespace website. I think, unless there's any questions, I guess that's most of what I have to say about QuickBooks for right now. I could go on and on about it forever, but yeah, I know there was a question of like, when is it the time appropriate for me to switch to QuickBooks? And for me, the answer was to meet my goals of being of financial security. The answer was right away, as soon as I could, just because I wanted to be able to, pay myself and have a farm that would, not just be a drain. Yeah. So let's see. Here's my information view slideshow. If you like pretty flower pictures, you can follow me at Instagram at Grounded Flowers. There's an upcoming class. I have not taken it or anything, but it is a 6-class session to get your QuickBooks set up. And I think it's only $50. So if you're someone who likes to have your hand held doing things like this, I would suggest looking into it. And the Carrot Project, who Cian works for, is how I got set up with my QuickBooks. So if you're in the area, in my area being Massachusetts, they're another good company to look into. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Emily. I'm glad to see all of your good data in there at your fingertips. It's nice to be able to just push buttons and find information that you're looking for, but you also have to put the information in there, which I think is key, right?
Yeah.
Do you know how much time on average, like, do you just do it in the field as you go? Is that part of your daily operations?
No, I set a time for reconciling things. I usually do it after the first of the month because my bank statement will have come in and I can go through and figure out if I met my month goals for my cash flow projection, or if something is really off on my cash flow projection. This year, I had thought I was going to do a ton of direct sales, just like selling bouquets, I don't know, out of the back of my car, because I don't have a farm stand. And I just didn't, the wholesaling, I did 0 wholesale last year. Or I did like maybe, I don't know, $1,000 or $2,000 of wholesale this year. So having the wholesale take off the way it did was a surprise, and a very welcome surprise, and partially probably because of how bad the wholesale markets, the normal wholesale markets have been for florists this year. There's been huge flower shortages. I had lots of florists who were like, half of my order didn't come in when I went to pick up my order at the wholesalers, and the other third of it came in the wrong color. And if you know brides, if it's not white, it can go to hell or something like that. I don't know. I also don't do weddings, so I don't have to deal with brides being picky about their colors. Yeah. So, but I do my invoicing for florists kind of as the orders come in. And that usually takes after a bit of practice, I don't know, maybe an hour or 2 a week putting together invoices. And again, sometimes I don't have the best boundaries with florists, and I will allow them to text, not that I allow them, but they will text me at 9:30 at night, the night before they want their order, and try to add stuff onto it. And I will do it. I probably should stop doing it, but I can't. Yeah.
So do you have an online ordering platform, or it really is just emailing or texting you through your website?
The wholesale is not online right now. I was planning on putting it online, and then I was like, I don't have time to do that because I'm trying to do it in May when I should be selling flowers. So the wholesale is through email and text message. I send out a weekly wholesale list that people will email me back with what they want off of it. And then my CSA, I do all through my website, which is a Squarespace website. And Squarespace has 0 back-end reporting. The back end of Squarespace is kind of clunky, so I'm going to switch to Shopify this year, just so I have some built-in like reports and metrics for my online sales as well.
Great, thank you. And I think you addressed this a little bit earlier, but either Cian or Emily, is there a decision tree that can assist folks in selecting between spreadsheet or QuickBooks? I mean, if you're really just very early stage beginning, I think both of you kind of addressed it in various points in your presentations, but I wonder if you just want to take that one more time for the record here.
What's funny is that the person who asked that is in Eastern Massachusetts, and I happen to know that CMAP and the Carrot Project are working together to do a workshop series to help that area with this question this winter. So he needs to talk to his local organization, because he can get fully funded, probably free one-on-one support from a professional to have that conversation to make sure with confidence he's making the right decision for his farm. So there is no one flowchart. I love flowcharts. I wish there was a flowchart. If I could possibly have made one, there would be one. But there isn't, because there are too many variables. I'm mostly a CSA. If you have a CSA model, you don't necessarily expect to have the same level of detail that you can get out of QuickBooks that Emily showed us, right? The level of detail that she has in her QuickBooks is stellar. I don't know many vegetable growers that have the level of detail that the floral growers have, because everything turns on a dime. Last year's colors are not next year's colors. She needs different varieties, and she has to keep track of that very specifically. Chioggia beets are Chioggia beets. I'm not really going to be switching those out, you know. So I have different questions to answer than she does within our QuickBooks. Although what money's coming in from the CSA and what money's coming in from wholesale accounts and what money is coming in direct sales, all is very important. And being able to see that is important. So I think that figuring out with someone, sitting down and having that conversation, what questions do I want to be able to answer for my farm so that I can move in the direction of being more profitable, will answer at what point are you at the point where you need to really say goodbye to your spreadsheet as QuickBooks and look at QuickBooks or another software program. And some of the software programs are less complex than QuickBooks is, but I'm with Emily. The reports are really what hooked me. You put the information in, it functions like a database, and then you can run the reports, you can change things around and run the report again and get a different perspective on the same data all within the same program. Whereas if you were doing that in a spreadsheet, it would be very clunky and you wouldn't get the same capacity, but you also wouldn't get the same speed. And Dave, who asked the question, seems like someone who would probably go right after that speed. I think that he's probably going to end up finding that QuickBooks is the right fit for him because that's what he's looking for ultimately. But my big thing is that it's hard to know. QuickBooks wants to sell you their most expensive product. I am a professional who works with QuickBooks when I am not in the field. And I called them a couple of weeks ago to find something out for a client and was like, well, I have you on the phone. I have this question. And they tried to double the price that they were charging me. And I was like, no, that's not how this works. Upside, the good end of this story is that I left getting a full 12 months at 50% off because I could tell what they were doing and basically called BS on them. But their job is to sell you something more complicated than you need. Their job is to sell you up, right? So talking to someone who does not work for one of the companies that you're considering buying from can be really important to figuring out what you really need. And other growers who have similar models as you, who maybe have been doing it for longer or are more profitable, are a great option as well.
Great, thank you. And I'm just going down the Q&A. If other people want to ask other questions, feel free to jump in. But one of the other questions, I think you may have mentioned it, but I don't know if you answered specifics, but is there a different cost differential between the basics QuickBooks Online versus the desktop version? I know there's some savings with the desktop, but do you have the absolute figure numbers? Or
I tried to set those up and it doesn't translate exactly, unfortunately, because QuickBooks is trying to sell everyone for QuickBooks Online at this point. They make less money on desktop. So you know that it's less expensive because they're making less money on it. But it's something to the effect of, I want to say it's maybe $600 a year or something to that effect for the annual fee that goes along with fully updated and I believe backed up QuickBooks Desktop. The similar capacity in QuickBooks Online costs over $1,000 a year. It's not exactly the same that they can tell me, but roughly speaking, right now they're doing a promotion. So for folks who are on the fence and they're thinking maybe if I sign up, you know, what I end up paying per month is usually $80 a month for what I need. And I don't have payroll. Payroll is an additional cost. So figuring out what level you need can be really helpful, but it's with QuickBooks Desktop, it's like one price, and I think it's about $600, and they try to do an annual update situation. So you're paying them once a year, like with Microsoft now. But right now it's 50, thanks, Carrie, it's 50% off for 3 months. So what I usually pay is $80. Right now it's $40 a month for a few months, and then the price will go up to $80. When I called them, they tried to sell me on the one that was $180. I was like, I don't need that, actually. But it starts, the most basic version for online starts at $25, or I think it's $25 a month. That is not likely to have the complexity that any farmer will find helpful. That's like, my wife used to write marketing plans and build websites. She had a very small number of products. She would have been sending invoices. She could do everything from her phone. That's designed for that kind of professional. For farmers, we just have more complex math. The least complicated things we're looking at in terms of categories in our charts of accounts of where money is being spent is for our office. Those are all of the expenses for a lot of professionals these days. So we just have more that we need to know, which means that we usually end up with a more expensive and more complex version of software.
Great, thank you. And I think maybe Emily, you kind of addressed Nicole's question. Does QuickBooks integrate items from Square for invoicing, or is that something you had to set up separately?
I can't speak to Square because I use Squarespace, and even though they have similar names, they're separate. For the Squarespace to QuickBooks, I used a program called OneSAS, which was actually recently bought by QuickBooks because they keep buying everything. And the program itself also took a little bit of finagling to set up. But once it was set up, I don't have to do anything. It just automatically imports all of the information from every transaction into the program for me. Square probably has an app of some sort. QuickBooks Online, I believe, has a section where you can like look at apps that you can add into it. Like I have my payroll through Gusto because I didn't want to sell my entire soul to QuickBooks. So I do my payroll through Gusto, and they have an app that integrates all of their information into my QuickBooks without me having to do anything. So there's a lot of apps that will do these things for you, and trying to figure out which one's going to work sometimes is a weird thing to figure out. But that's why we have the winter and why we are smart and doing things in the winter and not leaving them till May, like I try to do every year.
Great. Thank you. Go ahead.
They do work fairly well together. But one of the issues that people have come up with is if you're using Square, when you're doing direct to consumer sales, say at a farmer's market, and the Square imports into QuickBooks, it's trying to track your inventory. Farm inventories are rarely successfully inventoried in a reasonable way in QuickBooks, in my experience. Largely, I've worked with vegetable farms. The rate at which stuff goes bad is why inventories don't tend to do well in QuickBooks. For stuff that doesn't go bad, it's fine. So I've known some livestock farms that have done solidly with that because everything goes in the freezer and then you sell through it. But the fact that a solid percentage of my compost and Emily's compost is stuff that would have been in our inventory a few days ago means that that's not necessarily a good use of our time to do the inventory in QuickBooks. But because Square assumes that you want your inventory in QuickBooks also, I've heard a lot of people find it a little bit clunky and have to do a separate step, but it does import, and there's a way to make it not clunky. And Julia Shanks teaches people how to do that. She has a little video, I believe, on YouTube and at thefarmersoffice.com. But there's also, I believe she does a workshop on that specifically on Square and making it play even more nicely with QuickBooks. But because QuickBooks is kind of the gold standard in terms of bookkeeping, other companies bend over backwards to make things work with your QuickBooks, which helps if you are, dropping $80 a month like I am, to know that you're gonna be able to do that. So my CSA sales are through Square, and that works seamlessly.
Great, wonderful. I'm going to launch the post-workshop poll, but we still have a few minutes left if other folks have different questions that they'd want to ask. So if you don't mind filling out the poll while we get our final questions in, this would be great. Do folks have other questions about bookkeeping systems, software, QuickBooks, other general farming questions, other financial risk management questions? If not, I'm happy to stay on, but I would just love to both thank Cian and Emily so much for sharing all your great information and hopefully inspiring everybody to take a more proactive approach with tracking your data and entering it into a system that will work for you to make good business decisions. So thank you both so much for all of your great work presenting tonight, and hopefully inspiring everybody to manage their financial risks a little better. So there's a request in the chat for Cian, if you don't mind sharing your information in the chat as well, that would be great. And Dave, did you have a question?
Not a well-formed one. So if I'm cognizant that it's recording, so I'm going to try to focus here. But I'm as a real new farmer trying to navigate this space, it seems like a spreadsheet tool is potentially useful, but also potentially a pitfall. Whereas the only other maybe viable alternative, or those who know and have felt the pain, are really trying to steer those beginning farmers like, look, don't fall down this crevasse, just go this way, just do it. It's worth every penny, even though we're griping about the size of this industry and how they might not completely understand farmers and farmers' needs, and the a la carte system isn't flexible for farmers, it's flexible for an industry. But the question is, maybe a session that gets at like the key performance indicators that help you decide whether or not you need a system like this, or key business practices that you're doing. If you don't have payroll, if you're not invoicing, like I feel like there's a way to kind of optimize where there isn't maybe something that it can attach to if you're in between, something that'll just kind of steer you clear, because some of these costs do seem kind of large, for at least not having used it, for what they are. But yeah, not a super helpful comment or question there, but the joke is that I'm feeling inspired to set up sloth books and have it be a free service, and it's just like a giant template that has some great back-end basic, reports for you, or visuals and dashboards that lives in Google spreadsheets. But maybe that's naive. But again, I feel like the shoebox solution might be simplified, but it'd be good to know that, because right now I'm in the space of, I don't know.
Well, there are options. There's an open source spreadsheet program, but there's also an open source program that is software. It's a Linux based. I had it in my slide, and now I'm forgetting the name of it. Xero costs less than QuickBooks, but it is a pay for play. Whereas I want to say it might be New Money. I think it's GNU, is an open source version, and I don't have enough familiarity with it to speak to them with the real the level of detail. It's Newcash, GNUCASH, but it is open source, which means that it's being updated for free by people who are volunteering their time to do that. I love that open source stuff is becoming more available. Before I became a winter professional, I had open office that we didn't pay for Microsoft, because why bother? We didn't need to. Now we do, and it's worth the investment for me to make that. There's a return on that investment. So really, for a lot of folks, the question is, will I see a return on this investment? It's not different as a business owner than making a decision about if or when to buy that new implement. It's what is the investment I'm making, and is it going to really push my business forward and make this a better business? And you define what better means. We get to be the ones who write the rules when we're the ones who are signing the checks, right? So I encourage, if you're really into it, I can understand that. I really can. Most small scale organic farmers don't get into business to give all their money to QuickBooks. So if your concern is finding something that fits your needs, look, see what's out there. I don't think I've heard of sloth books. I'll keep an eye out for it. But in the meanwhile, check out Newcash, because it's an open source option, and that might be everything that you need. It probably wouldn't provide the level of reports that Emily is looking at. It's probably not going to fill the professional needs that I am, because I'm making money on the winter helping people with QuickBooks. So it's always, every decision we make is informed by so many more things, but ultimately, will it help your farm be more profitable?
Yeah, and I would say too, one of the things that I was finding when I started first, like being like, wow, I really need to get a handle on my financials, is that when I would start reading things, the sources would say like, financials are terrifying to look at and dealing with them is scary, especially as a farmer when the margins for what you're growing can be minuscule, especially if you're paying yourself or trying to pay yourself. So even if the idea seems scary to start with QuickBooks or to start with something that is simpler, you should applaud yourself for thinking at all about your financials, because not everyone does it. And I think it's very smart to do it to get a good handle on what you're doing. And for me, I see the costs of QuickBooks as just a cost of production for me. Like if I don't know what my other, if I don't know what's going on with my sales or what I'm spending my money on, then my business is not going to be run nearly as efficiently or nearly as well. And I could just be flushing money down the drain. Like not that I was completely flushing money down the drain last year. It was 2020 after all, and we were all, learning how to pivot, everyone's favorite word from last year. But yeah, I would say it's okay to feel scared. If you feel scared or if it seems scary to think about working with QuickBooks, you are probably on the right track.
That was really helpful.
Well, thank you so much again. I know we're at time, so I really appreciate you both and for sharing and for all the great questions from participants. So thank you again. And if people do have follow-up questions, I encourage you to reach out. I'm happy to try to help navigate connections to other resources or services for you to connect with moving forward. And please do tune into the next few workshops in our series. So early January, on January 6th, we will be launching into our looking at your point of sale data to make business decisions. So we'll be having a great presentation with Matt LaRue from Cornell Cooperative Extension and a couple of farmers giving their perspective on how they use that data to keep track of their sales information. And if you have any other suggestions for how we can improve this workshop series, please let me know. I'll be sending you the follow-up email tomorrow with the link to the recording and a workshop evaluation. And stay tuned for more. Thanks again, Emily and Cian, and hope you all have a wonderful holiday break. We'll see you again in January. Thank you.